You don't think that they're any of us? Okay. As we say back home, bet, which is just a way of saying, all right, I'm gonna show you. So that's probably just been my motto when it comes to State of Black design and the community. Bet, like, okay.
I don't need to know names because culturally it is familiar. The walk, the clothing, the smells, the music, the heartbeat of it. We are connected in such a way that fuels the soul. And I wish there was more of that.
Hello, I'm Doug Powell. Welcome to This is a Prototype, the Design Leadership Podcast. The State of Black Design Conference was launched as a virtual event in 2020 during the wake of the murder of George Floyd. This was a time when our country and the design industry were confronting the sobering realities of racial inequity. Since 2020, the State of Black Design has grown into a vibrant and thriving community of design leaders, practitioners, educators, and students. And next month, that community will come together in Minneapolis for the second in-person State of Black Design Conference, We On Point, a celebration of Black design excellence, which kicks off on June 19th. In this special episode of This is a Prototype, I speak with the founder of State of Black Design, Professor Omari Souza, and with one of the moderators of the upcoming conference, Chanda Smith Baker. Omari Souza is a designer, educator, and community activist with industry experience at organizations such as Vibe Magazine, Capital One, and CBS Radio. Omari is now assistant professor of communication design at University of North Texas. His forthcoming book, Design Against Racism, Creating Work That Transforms Communities, explores the role of design in perpetuating and repairing racial harm. Chanda Smith Baker has spent her career of more than 25 years at the intersection of philanthropy, business, government, and community. Founder and CEO of the Minneapolis-based consultancy Smith Baker, Chanda is an experienced executive leader, board member, and public speaker who focuses on nurturing diverse talent and activating audiences toward racial equity and social impact. Her podcast, Conversations with Chanda, can be found wherever you get your pods. As always, I start this episode by asking my guests to share their backstories and career journeys. We start with Omari Souza and his story.
I am a first-generation American. I grew up in an immigrant family. Family came from Jamaica, and I grew up in the Bronx, New York. My generation is the first generation to go to college, and my elder cousin Neville, who, I really looked up to and modeled a lot of myself after, went to school for graphic design. So I knew whatever he did, I was going to try to do. And there's a chapter in my upcoming book where I talk about my elementary school experiences and how that also influenced my leadership style today. I started going to a Catholic school called Our Lady of Mount Carmel in the South Bronx, a few blocks away from Fordham University. And during my time there, I really enjoyed it, but I was really young and impressionable. The staff wasn't very diverse, and the heroes that were on the wall, like the stained glass windows, the pictures of presidents, all this other stuff, nothing looked like me. So when the school was attempting to instill morality, heroism, and all of these things into me, I couldn't connect it with my own identity, but I knew what it was. I understood what they were trying to tell me to be, but I couldn't identify with it as myself. So there were windows where I wanted to change my name and wanted to change how I talked so that I could better align with what they were presenting to me. Saved by the Bell was a big show at the time. So I told my parents I wanted to be named Zach going forward. To which my parents said, absolutely not. So
Absolutely not, young man.
Especially my dad, a very proud Rastafarian man who chose my name because it had meaning. For me to change it to something else, just because I couldn't identify with what was being shown to me was an affront to him. So he pulled me from that school and they put me in a public school in the northeast section of the Bronx, right off of Boston Road, Gun Hill Road area, where a lot of fellow immigrants lived. And we had a teacher there who was the complete opposite. Her name was Miss Greenwich. And Miss Greenwich came to school every day with dashikis. And when you walked into her classrooms, there were posts, like pictures posted on the wall of Langston Hughes or Neil Hurston, Angela Davis, Maya Angelou. And we talked about them. And when we walked in the hallway as a class, whether it was to go to the bathroom or to go on trips, she would teach us chants, like Western African chants, and we would have to chant in the hallway, going from one location to the next. And she told us she would do these reading sessions with us, and she read this book called The Black Snowman, which to this day has like a huge impact on me. And the story was about two brothers who grew up in a poor section of town, and they were looking forward to Christmas, but they felt ashamed because they were poor. They would look on the other side of town and they would have white snow and all of this other stuff. But because they lived in an urban section, by the time the snow landed, it was trampled and run over. So the snow was like muddy and dark and dirty, which also brought some shame. They ended up building the snowman regardless, because the youngest brother had a lot more enthusiasm and positive spirits about it than the older brother. And they ended up finding this kente cloth that they put around the neck of this snowman. And they didn't realize that this kente cloth, this artifact of heritage, was empowering. So it brought the snowman to life. The snowman begins to dialogue with them and like tries to talk them through the shame that they're feeling, and like introduces them to like this lineage of history that they've had, that they didn't know about and should be proud of and embrace. To which the older brother was like, I'm not taking any advice from a talking snowman. This is creepy. I don't know what's going on. So the brother takes them, they go home. But the younger brother, Christmas approaching, decides that he wants to get, and I'll wrap the story up shortly. This is the climax and the twist, for me at least. The brother tries to go out and gather cans that he can recycle so that he can afford to buy his mother a Christmas gift, and ends up finding an abandoned home building where he feels he can find these recyclables. And the building he walks into catches fire. The older brother goes inside to try to save him, but ultimately he gets trapped. And it's the snowman that comes in to save them. But the snowman is, of course, made of snow. So as he's ushering the children out, his body parts begin to melt. And as they begin to melt, he calls on the power of the artifact and he starts to yell, restore, restore. And as his leg melts, restore, the leg comes back. As his arm melts, restore, the arm comes back. But he realizes the artifact isn't powerful enough for both him and the children. So he wraps the children in this artifact, passing down the power and getting them free at his own detriment. And once they're free, it's this realization that this history that I've been ashamed of, this history that I've been avoiding, has saved me. It gave me and saved my brother. It gave me this ability, and it also connected to me that Miss Greenwich, who was an elementary school teacher who often don't get paid the money that they're worth, shows up to work, finds these stories that were outside of the standard curriculum in order to introduce to an audience of kids who were essentially lower middle class or poor, and restoring their self-worth, their self-dignity, and their identity, of who they felt they could become in society through these stories, through these images of other leaders. And for me, that has inspired me to use my talents to create spaces where people can be redignified, especially in spaces where they haven't been allotted that opportunity before in the past.
I've got goosebumps. That's such a lovely, lovely story. And I speak to a lot of guests on this series who reference, teachers earlier in their life who just had this outsized and pivotal influence on their trajectory. And Miss Greenwich, wow. Chanda Smith Baker, thank you for joining us and welcome. And I'd love to trace your journey, if you would take us along that ride for a few minutes here.
Well, I grew up on the north side of Minneapolis. My maternal side, I'm either fourth or fifth generation. And so as an African-American person, that is a bit unusual in the state of Minnesota. Most Black families came here with the Great Migration, which is how my paternal side of the family got here. My mother, who passed away in 2020, was a fierce champion of the neighborhood. And she would say that this neighborhood in particular, is not a place you move from, it's a place you invest in. And so very early, I became aware, because of her fierce protection of a community that had been so good to our family. She would respond immediately and almost aggressively sometimes for people that would describe it only by its challenges, that would broad sweep people, that would talk about it only in sort of a violent way. And she wanted to make sure that we understood the strength of who we were, the power that we had within us, and the opportunity to improve conditions. Like, that was very, very early embedded. And I think as a result of it, I was very, and I've said this, I've written it, that I grew up in a community with people without the privilege or the connections to describe it, felt that they could, and they shifted narratives about people, right? Black people, Black community, Black neighborhoods, Black schools. And while they had no relationships, no connections, and hadn't driven the streets. And so I have spent a career thinking about narrative, how it is broadly defined, and the comfort that people have in that, the privilege that it gets to be able to influence how others feel about entire group of people or entire communities of people, was always fascinating to me. My experience growing up in the community was very different than how it was being described by people outside. And so I feel the same way with other communities that I'm not from, is what else should I be investigating? What should I be curious about? How did they arrive here? Like, I have sort of this insatiable curiosity that I think was driven by the lack of curiosity about me and my neighbors. And so that has been a driving force. Omari, as you were talking, I thought of two people. One is my aunt, Gladys Randall, who passed away this January at 93. And she lived in our neighborhood as well. Most of my family does. She bought a house back when the city was offering homes for $1 as a way to incentivize homeownership. And it's modest, couple bedrooms, kitchen, particularly compared to what people need to or think they need today. But beautiful. It was a cultural experience. You walked in, there were African masks from her travels. There were floor-to-ceiling bookshelves in multiple rooms of her home, where she had pictures of herself with Gordon Parks, where all of her books were signed. She talked to me about first editions. I love being in libraries. I love being around books. I love what it opens up for me. And I am certain that not only did I love it, but my love for it matched my love that my aunt had, right? It wasn't just bookshelves, it was a cultural experience that there was nowhere else in the city I could find. But I could go there and my world could open up to the continent of Africa. It could open up to the stories that she would tell that would sit on those bookshelves. And so I was keenly aware that culturally I was missing something, right? The rooting, the identity of connection to culture was missing from my experiences on a daily basis. And that I was certain, based on her involvement in my life, that if I was going to get it, I had to create it or I had to seek it, because it wasn't coming. It wasn't going to be in any room I opened up. That I had to curate an experience that reflected who I am and what I wanted to be.
That is so interesting, and you referenced this or implied this a number of times in that story, Chanda. The awareness that you had both with your mother and with your Aunt Gladys, that they were bringing something to you that the rest of the world wasn't providing to you.
I mean, I think it's right. I think they understood the importance of groundedness and connection and ancestry. My aunt was also the keeper. There's usually a keeper of ancestry in families. She was our keeper of that. It's now passed on to my sister. And then from an education point of view, I had two people. One was my second grade teacher, Miss Toy. She is now my sorer, and which I love so much when I run into her. But she nurtured my love of reading. She would bring me chapter books after chapter books when I was in second grade. All of them I still have. My uncle, Dr. Richard Green, who was the first Black superintendent of schools in Minnesota. And he was also the first Black chancellors of schools in New York. And so he's got a school named after him in every borough. And he used to make me go to school board meetings that happened during the day. He would have my other uncle pick me up to go attend these meetings when I was in middle school. And I never really understood why. And I had a number of experiences with him where I didn't want to go, right? Kicking and screaming. But I realized now he was investing in my leadership. He was investing in my understanding of, number one, again, like all of my relatives, that life does not center around you. You have a responsibility of improving conditions for others. This responsibility of, while I have the seat, I will make sure you understand the seat I'm in.
That is amazing. Omari, you were about to jump in there. I'll get to you in a moment here, but I do want to pause on Dr. Richard Green. I'm a Minneapolis native myself, and he is a legendary figure in the history of that city, and as you described, Chanda, then went on to New York City, and Omari, entered your world too, whether you knew it or not. That's amazing, Chanda. What a beautiful family backstory. So many threads there. The keeper. I love that sort of identification of the person in the family who holds the heritage and the stories.
Yeah, we were joking earlier, and I'm like, I have royalty inside my DNA, and I believe it, I know it, and I appreciate it, and I'm responsible to it.
That's beautiful. Chanda, I wanted to give you a moment to talk about your firm, Smith Baker. What is the orientation of your company, and what types of organizations are you engaging with?
I want to say a little bit about how I got there, because I resigned from an executive role that I was in. And I was sort of in a moment of life. My youngest child of 5 turned 18, and I decided that my last day was going to be on his 18th birthday. And I was just going to take this faith plunge and see what would happen. And so I launched my consultancy, my business, which includes the podcast series that I have, Conversations with Chanda. I wanted to expand it into events, and I love to moderate. I love to thread stories, and I wanted to push that out a little bit. I want to support the conditions for people, community, and organizations to be successful. I believe that includes good governance. I believe it includes strong leadership and great culture. And so most of my business is focused there, and the other part of it is focused on telling the stories. So I do a lot of board governance, executive coaching, strategy development with groups that I'm working with. And the groups range from nonprofits, philanthropy, for-profits. I'm recently wrapping up with a casino that is on Native land, thinking about how we can disrupt narrative, thinking about how to build out a corporate social responsibility, and how we can tell a story of their contribution to their local communities, to the state, and to the region. And so that's really what the work has been. I've been out doing the work for 2 years after 25 years or so being involved directly in roles within the nonprofit and philanthropic sectors.
And you mentioned in that story of Smith Baker, your frequent role as a moderator That is the role that you are going to be playing in the State of Black Design We On Point conference coming up June 19th and 20th in Minneapolis. Omari, you are the founder and visionary of the State of Black Design community and events. Tell us the origin story of State of Black Design.
State of Black Design started in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. The window of time in design was a little contentious. There were a lot of people of color that felt frustrated with a lot of design leaders. There were conferences, mini conferences, and events that wouldn't highlight people of color and or wouldn't show women on their main stage. And if they did, they were few and far between. These conference spaces were often very homogenous, and on top of that, often priced out a lot of people who really wanted to attend. They weren't as accessible. When we would email some of these leaders and ask them, not even about the pricing, but more so in relation to the people that they were selecting, we'd often hear something that people of color often hear, or people from marginalized identities in general, that there weren't enough qualified members of X community, whether it's women or people of color, to consider having them on the main stage. So at a time when the world is in an uproar and our students are applying pressure on faculty and administration in the same way that everyone was applying pressure on their leadership to figure out what they could do in regards to this tragedy that took place in Minneapolis. I was one of, I believe, 89 faculty members at the College of Art and Design at Texas State University, and the only tenure track one who happened to be Black. So as you know, as students were asking, what are you guys going to do? I had a number of my colleagues turn to me and ask, what are you going to do? Which often ends up becoming the responsibility of marginalized people in these spaces. But it did put me in a position where I needed to ask, what does the community need at this point in time? And for me, the thing that popped up was representation. Similar to the artifact in the story Black Snowman, we needed to be able to see heroes that looked like us, both to prove to ourselves that they existed, in addition to proving to those who told us they didn't exist that they existed. I didn't have a name, not to say I have one now, so I wasn't expecting a huge crowd. I assumed our program had 500 students. It would have been a success if I got close to 100. And I pulled 13 designers, Minneapolis' own Teresa Moses, who's done a ton of amazing things in her career and still continues to do them. Erwin Hines, who also has done some amazing things, and his fashion line, Futurist Color, continues to do awesome things. Maurice Sherry, who for the design community is the keeper of records, is the one who holds a lot of the history because of the work that he's done. Jennifer White Johnson, another legend, and the list goes on. Dr. Leslie Ann Noel. I gathered them and broke the group into 4 sections. Design, professional practice, so we could talk about the intersections of race and corporate practice. Design and activism, so we can talk about how we leverage our skill sets to advocate for others. Design entrepreneurship, so we talked with folks that ran their own studios and talked about the intricacies of being a person of color, the difficulties that we experience and the beauties that we experience while being business owners. And then pedagogical approaches as Black faculty. What are we doing differently than our white colleagues? Why is it important for us to do these things? And what is the resistance that we get, and sometimes the criticism and pushback that we get from academia for practicing this way? To my surprise, the event did more than the 100 people that I anticipated. We promoted it via Eventbrite, and 5,000 people registered and watched. A lot of people felt really impacted by it, and there were a lot of studios. And even many of those conference leaders that we emailed out reached out to me asking, how can we be a part of this? How can we support what's going on? Many of them began the process of now pulling some of our speakers from conferences to feature on their stages. And then we began, hearing from companies who wanted to recruit. Doug, when you were at IBM became our title sponsor. And then when you transitioned into a leadership role at Expedia, you also sponsored us there. Microsoft sponsored. When Google approached us, we asked them, in addition to their sponsorship dollars, if they'd be willing to gift us 500 seats to their Coursera course, so that we could help those transition into the field that didn't have the money to get into academia. So we were able to give that. Over the last 5 years, we've given $50,000 in scholarship funding out of the money that we've been able to raise. And we've really just tried to use it as an opportunity to have those conversations that no one else was having about our community in our community's creative spaces, but also creating pathways. Last year was our first opportunity to do an event in person. Strategically for us, we've been trying to avoid hosting major conferences in cities that traditionally get major design conferences. So avoiding my hometown of New York, cities like Atlanta, Chicago, Boston, and Los Angeles, but picking the cities that have high Black populations. That way we could be in their backyard, making it more accessible. And we chose Nashville, Tennessee in March because they had 3 HBCUs in town. All 3 had creative programs. Tennessee State University has an amazing design program. Fisk is a world-renowned art program. And Meharry, one of the only 2 historically Black medical school, has a medical device design program. This year, we're planning 2 events, one of which was in Minneapolis, which for us feels very poetic because it's an opportunity to come to the city on the soil that inspired the movement in the very beginning.
A beautiful story. And that original online conference, fully remote in the year 2020, the first State of Black Design conference. I mean, just the energy that was present at that event was just remarkable. Just the pure attendance numbers just speak volumes of the need for this, and really reflecting back on your earlier comments about this sentiment in the broader profession that, oh, there just isn't enough talent. And in one gesture at that conference, you completely debunked that idea, but instead you celebrated that the opposite, in fact, is true.
The first event had 13 speakers, and each event since we've tried to have 40 to 50 speakers on stage. In many ways, our programs are very dense with a lot of, people giving information and sharing cool initiatives. But it is very much a celebration of and a passive aggressive way of, combating that statement. You don't think that there are any of us? Okay. As we say back home, bet, which is just a way of saying, all right, I'm gonna show you. So that's probably just been my motto when it comes to State of Black Design and the community. Bet, okay.
Chanda, as you're here, I know you're obviously familiar with the community, but as you're hearing this, are you connecting this story to other movements, other communities that you're working with or that you have in your field of vision?
I say that, I work with underestimated communities all of the time. I think that, my story of people not having the privilege of defining or narrating someone else's story and yet they have comfort doing it is no different than people saying that there's no talent because you don't know them. There's a lot of privilege in that statement by itself. There's a lot of racism embedded in that. And I think the creative part of the work is always that, okay, bet, let me show you, right? Let me show you what I can do. Let me show you what this organization can do. Let me show you what a collective experience looks like. I think about the energy as you were describing it and reflecting on the first time that I went to a conference that was all Black. I didn't know if I should just sit and cry the entire time or just celebrate because it was so foreign to my own experience, right? I go to Essence, you touch down before you get on the airplane and like it's a plane of women going to Essence, right? You step into the airport. I don't need to know names because culturally it is familiar. The walk, the clothing, the smells, the music, the heartbeat of it. We are connected in such a way that fuels the soul. And I wish there was more of that. I think that in this time where social media it has its place, and one of those places are exposure to Black creatives, Black experience, Black culture, or the cultures that you are unfamiliar with. So if someone is unfamiliar, they're trying really hard to be unfamiliar, right? You may not have proximity, but you got proximity. If you on the internet and your experience is not diverse, that's on purpose. Just like it requires me to reach out to communities that don't look like me to make friends, make relationships, build together, because I understand that our liberation is connected. And so I think that, yes, there's many experiences that I have had similar, but it's because I had to seek them or create them. And I think that part of what I hope the work is, and what I believe it is that it becomes less of these episodic annual experience to a number of experiences that you can find and look forward to that are reflective of your culture, your experience, and your expertise. There's lots of excitement for me. I'm happy to be involved with it. I'm happy it's in our city where George Floyd was murdered. That outrageous murder, that horrific event, that out of that moment, there's so much that has been birthed. We don't have to do what we've always done in this country in the way that we've had to do it. Our voice and our genius is bigger than the problems we've been focused on. And let's put that on display. Let's turn a corner here. Because I'm here in the roles I'm in, I hear about so many things that were launched. I don't always know why things happen, but I can see what came from it, which is a beautiful expression of care and commitment and disruption.
Because many of us as Chanda's stated earlier, from underestimated communities don't have the ability or the capital or the space or the reach or the influence to retort and place something out as publicly. We can't argue it in the same manner. And for many people that hear it, that aren't, I don't want to say triggered, but encouraged to do their own investigation to figure out whether or not this is true, they'll take it on face value. And then that begins this process of erasure where, it becomes the talent isn't there, not because the talent isn't there, but because you've stated the talent isn't there. And because you've stated the talent isn't there, people aren't looking for the talent. And because people aren't looking for the talent can never fully actualize. So with organizations like the State of Black Design, for us, like attempting to place that talent in the forefront, it becomes really difficult to then deny it.
It gets back to Chanda's earlier comment about curiosity and the need for that sort of intentional seeking of the truth, of the story, of the experience that otherwise is not provided for you. It's not served up for you. I want to be sure we lay out the straight facts on State of Black Design, We On Point, June 19th and 20th in Minneapolis. Omari, give us a little bit of the detail of how the 2 days will break down.
So day one on June 19th is kind of just an informal day of celebration. We are going to be meeting at the MIA to go through the Giant exhibit, the art collection that belongs to Swiss Beats and Alicia Keys, the Dean collection. There'll also be a little bit of a celebration at the museum space. From there, we will be walking a few blocks down to family's fellow countrymen at Pimento's, where we will be enjoying a meal and some good times. Following that, we will have a second day of programming. The first half of the day, similar to our Nashville events, will be dedicated to professional development. So there'll be a number of workshops in the morning that won't be broadcasted, but in the evening, there will be a number of presentations. We have our version of Peachy Cooches, which I call 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot bunches. If it sounds familiar, yes, it's inspired by the Lil Wayne song, but folks, instead of having 5 minutes, will have either 6, 7, or 8 minutes. And taking inspiration from the Apollo, we don't have the Sandman, he's not going to sweep you, but the DJ will play you off. So it's an encouragement for folks to stay within the time that's been allotted to them. After that, we have a series of keynotes and open discussions around where we are as a community, what's happening in the world, and what we should do going forward, or what we think should be done going forward, which is followed by our final keynote address, which talks about Black history, culture, and weaving stories together.
And in that afternoon of the 20th, Chanda Smith Baker moderating a panel with you, Omari, I believe, and several other leaders. So that'll be a feature sort of pillar presentation and moment of that afternoon, right?
Yes. I'm considering it the anchor conversation around community. Like, what is it that we need right now? What are we feeling? And how do we as a community gather around each other to support one another? It's just a very interesting time because 5 years ago, we did experience something that was extremely tragic. It felt very encouraging to see how the community came together and the companies that were making promises to support. 5 years later, it's discouraging to see the attempt to force a walk back of many of these promises by the current administration. So for me, it's a time where conversations again are very needed.
And how can we connect with each other? This has been such a rich and lovely conversation. So many just amazing stories shared. I'm so looking forward to State of Black Design, We On Point, June 19th and 20th in Minneapolis. I will see you both there. Chanda Smith Baker, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I also want to just note, I am on the board at MIA, where it will be on the 19th. And I think this is just another disruptive way of being in community. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, Doug. I appreciate the invitation.
Omari Souza, as always, great to see you, and we will see each other in about a month.
Thank you for having me.
That's all for this special episode of This is a Prototype, the Design Leadership Podcast. Remember, the State of Black Design We On Point Conference is June 19th and 20th in Minneapolis. Find more information and register at thesobd.com. Special thanks to Scott Leach of Brandspeak Communications for his production assistance on this series, and to Graham Barton for his original theme music. I'm currently planning the 3rd season of This is a Prototype, so stay tuned for more information about that coming soon. And as always, please reach out to me on LinkedIn with your ideas and feedback. You can find out more about my work as a design leader, trainer, and coach on my website, dougpowell.design. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.